Hello, everybody, and welcome to Julie's Unknown podcast. I am here today with Claudia. And Claudia actually, she found a post I created a long time ago through this
Mhm.
Facebook group that we are both part of. And not many people had commented because it's like it was hidden in the group. It wasn't something in the forefront. And I was looking for podcast guests at that time, but this was when I first started my podcast and nobody responded. And I was like, all right, it wasn't meant to be. And then now that I'm creating this new season with a new intention, she found me, she found it and commented on it and then found me and then we were like, oh my God, this is meant to be. And we had a coffee chat. I just love her energy. I love her vibe. And I just want to welcome her here. She is a relationship coach who specializes in supporting women who want to attract and create full, healthy relationships that will last. So, Claudia, welcome to the show. And tell me, how did you get into this style of coaching? Because I have many coaches come on here and we're having amazing conversations. And you're
Mm.
the first relationship coach that I'm bringing on, and I would love to hear how you got into it. What's your story?
Hello, everyone. I started initially, I started with emotional intelligence, so coaching emotional intelligence. It kind of got to the point where I felt like I wanted to link it to something more practical and literally like people around me, just like, like friends or even like random people. I can just remember I went to the bank and there was this man who was like he was a bank manager and we were talking and he just made this statement and he was like, you know what? Relationships are just the hardest thing in life, the hardest thing in life. And on that moment, I was like, wow, that's such an interesting. Like, he was like, I accomplished so much. I've done this, I've done that, but relationships, I just can't figure them out. And I thought, wow. And sort of people kept on telling me these things, like, completely unrelated people. And I thought, I've always been very interested in the sort of healing the female male split and sort of and creating, harmony and also seeing my history with relationships and how I met my husband and sort of everything that we went through. It really just felt like organically was flowing that way. And I feel like, especially when I talk about relationship and when I sit down with clients, it just feels like I get into this hard space. So it feels like it's healing for myself too, because it's something that comes out naturally. And it's just beautiful. Like ultimately, it's about people opening up their hearts. Like maybe relationships more than anything else is just like going back to that heart space. So it just brings me a lot of joy.
Oh, I love that. And I love that it was literally the universe just showing you things outside of
Yeah.
you and being like,
Really.
oh, hey, like, here's a hint. Now here's another hint, and here's another one. You can't ignore this. Because sometimes when we think of like going a practical direction in terms of healing, we can get stuck in the logical. So I love that you brought it. It was like even though
Mm.
you said the practical, but it was because the universe was showing you to go in that direction. And I love that. And it's beautiful that you mentioned about opening, people opening their hearts to you and in those sessions, and they are, I can imagine, just incredibly powerful because I through many experiences in my life with relationships, like not just like relationships in the romantic sense, but relationships and friendships and also in coworkers. And I have been burnt many times. And there was a period where I completely had my walls were up, my guard was up, because it was just, I just built on a thick skin with that because
Right.
of
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
those experiences. And I was like, nope, nobody's going to come through until
Yeah.
I started doing the spiritual development and the emotional intelligence. And it was like, oh, wait, my way is not working so well. And so what is your experience when, whether it is with yourself or your clients, when it comes to people who just have been burned so many times in the past, and they have that thick skin, and they have that closed heart space because of the experiences they've gone through.
I feel like really the key that has been in my life, and I see with clients too, is to really reframe your past in a way that is empowering. So I feel like we feel that our heart is really closed when we perceive our past as something bad and negative, and that's what actually really sort of tightens our heart. If the client is inclined to look back into the past, I don't always recommend it. It really depends on how the person, on the personality of the person, or just the way their mentality, their belief system. But if the person is inclined to look back into the past and sort of like starting to see the golden nuggets that have come out of those experiences, and sort of realizing that nothing has happened by chance, that, you know, there was an intentionality behind every experience that has led you to become more of who you really are. And actually the pain that you're feeling is you not having, not allowing yourself to be fully who you have become as a result of those experiences. And so I find that when we start looking at, and this is obviously, it has to come from the client of having the desire to heal, because not everybody has that. Some people are just very much caught up in their own pain and they don't want to see beyond that. But I love like working with people that are just opening up to the possibility that it can change and that it can be different, and sort of like walking them to the other side so they can feel empowered and they can feel like sort of like restoring that sense of well-being and that sense of trust that things can go well in their relationships, and things can, you know, they can have the relationship that they desire, because ultimately is like they shut off that desire. That's what happens when you close your heart. And so the whole healing is sort of allowing yourself to desire again, to realize that, you know, that your desire is pure, and that if it is there, it means that it's meant to be. And so it's maybe we can consider a more gentle approach that some other coaches have. I work a lot with the heart energy
I
and
love that.
opening up and changing the perspective. Because when you start seeing that your past is not this random thing that happened, that you haven't just been a victim of whatever happened, but there has been like everything makes sense. Not that you deserved anything bad that happened, but that there is a thread, there is a line that, and things make sense. And if you follow that line, that it leads you to your own self-empowerment, and ultimately to the power of this moment and the choices that you're making now.
Yeah, that's incredible, because that is what I have done, is like going into the past and into all these relationships. And it's, what did I learn from it? Well, what did it teach me? What
Mm-hmm.
did I take away from the situation? So what was some of the positive elements that I learned through those, you know, tougher situations? But then also, what am I grateful for that
Mm-hmm.
situation, for that relationship? And trying to find the gratitude and the learnings and the teachings and who has allowed me to become today. I know that there was like
Mm-hmm.
one relationship that I was in for 4 years, and had that not ended, I wouldn't be a coach today. That was what literally
Exactly.
pivoted for
Beautiful.
me to go into this
Mm-hmm.
industry. And it literally happened, like the breakup happened in September, and then by end of October I was signed up for my coaching certification. And in between that, I didn't even know, like when the relationship ended, I didn't even know what a coach was. It was that fast, between like
Mm-hmm.
a month and a half of like finding out the coaching industry, having my first coaching session and being like, this is incredible, I need to learn about this. And then it was just boom, boom.
Uh-huh.
But had that not ended, like because it ended, and then I reached out to a coach because I didn't want a therapist at the time. I just wanted somebody else to listen
Yes.
to me, but I wanted somebody positive. I wasn't in the headspace to, you know, look at my wounds at that time. I was not, I was feeling very hurt by the breakup. And so that is just like, it led to me having my first coaching session. And so it is just
Mm.
so interesting. And that is for anybody who's listening, is, looking back at those moments in life that, those relationships that, ended in the not greatest. No, like what happened after? What was like the few moments after that, your life turned around in other ways?
Right. And the emotions that that relationship triggered, and how, that emotions are informing you with patterns that you might want to release, and you might want to change, and you might want to, just simply being an indication of being like, oh, maybe I just want to approach this differently right now. And sort of it becomes an internal work, and which I don't like to make it sound like heavy, or like something that you have to do. It's like, it's literally a process of self liberation. And I find that, especially with relationships, they are meant to ultimately make you become more of who you really are, because you realize who you are by being in relationship with other people, and be like, oh, I'm realize that I'm more flexible than I thought I would be, or more open minded, or you are with somebody who's displaying a particular kind of quality that you don't resonate with and you don't want. And sort of, I feel like you really become more of who you really are once you have that open heart space. It just propels your creativity. It allows you to become more deeply who you really are, and it sort of ripples in all areas of life. It's not just, because sometimes you have the money coach, the business coach, the relationship coach. It's actually like everything is so interconnected in the end,
Always,
which is,
always, which is,
yeah.
I love that you bring that up because that is something. So for me, when I first started my like deep inner healing, I was single at the time, and then now I'm in a partnership, and the healing I'm doing now is obviously a different level because it is in the mirroring effect of this relationship and this partnership, or what it is showing me where to dive into. But I
Mm-hmm.
notice, and this is where you say everything's interconnected, is because I do have seasons. I go through seasons where I do deep healing, and then I come out the other side and I'm like, woo, let's have fun now. But when I am in these
Yes.
seasons of healing, it's not
Mm-hmm.
just the what I'm being shown in the relationship to heal for myself. It's not just that element. It is also like I'm tapping into my business, and it's like, what am I being shown here? I am tapping into, or I think last about 6 months ago, it was money. Money was a big theme at that time, but it was also like money and relationship, and it was two things intertwined. And so I noticed when I'm healing, I'm not just healing one area of life, like I'm actually two, three things at the
Exactly.
same time.
Yeah. Or like I've noticed, like I remember not too long ago, a few days ago, I felt something that I wanted to say to my partner, but I feel like, when you just feel the energy, I didn't have the words yet. And I kind of like, it was like a very honest sort of like telling him, like, this has been happening. You want to be mindful of this. And the moment I blurted out to him, I had like this idea to make a video and to make some kind of content around that. Like, and then, I do it and I put it up. It's like, it's all this ripple effect, like just by also like activating my voice, then it would ripple into the business. It's, yeah.
Yeah, it's so intertwined. And then even if you look at it from an astrology perspective, so money is in the second house, which of astrology,
Yeah.
which is ruled by Taurus. But then
Right. Exactly.
and then I went one day and I was like, oh, like which planet rules money? Because I wanted to see, like, because obviously I knew what planets were in my second house of astrology, but I did wanted to see which planets were in other houses and then how that intertwines with money. And
Actually, recently I got into that myself, like 2 weeks
yeah,
ago. I was really,
yeah.
yeah.
And so I Googled it and I was like, okay, so what planet is relating to money? And it came up, it was Venus.
Ah,
And I was like,
really?
and at that time I was like, oh, that just made so much sense. It was literally a light bulb because at that time I was single and I was in this repetitive pattern where, like men will come into my life, like we'll date for a month and they'll go away.
Yeah.
And money was the
So
same thing.
common.
Money was coming in and it was going away. And I was like, men and money are coming in and they're going away. And I'm like, oh, it is interconnected. And so now it's like, now knowing that, and I'm noticing like the money patterns and the love patterns, like the relationship patterns, very
Yeah.
similar.
A sense of worthiness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like worthy, like, do I feel worthy of like having money? Do I feel worthy of holding money? But do I also feel worthy of like having and holding a relationship?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it is interesting. Like they in love and relationships are intertwined in all areas of life. And
Mhm.
usually when I have people like when I work with clients, I like to tap into like other areas in life. Like they come to me for one thing and I'm like, okay, but what's going on here? And
Exactly.
what's
Same.
going on there?
Same. Yes. Like everything will come up, whatever is necessary or is important to be cleared out. Because ultimately, the process is the same. Specifically for me, I particularly love working with relationships because I love, first of all, I love working with people who have a strong desire enough about having a healthy relationship that they would do something about it. And so that sort of like, gives it, puts them in a place of really wanting to improve that area of life. But yeah, of course, like other things that need to come up will come up. And that's why, yeah, I love it because it becomes very holistic.
Yeah, no, it is. It's really interesting. And I think that the topic, like going back to like that topic of worthiness, is huge, especially like if you
Oh,
are, whether you are single or in a
mm-hmm.
relationship, it is such a big element. So I know that for myself, like that is still a journey. It's not,
Yeah, completely.
it's still a
Oh
journey.
my God, yeah. I'm not sitting here on a high horse being like, no, no, no. Like I'm putting all this process and like I'm applying all this process in my life as well. Because this is like, first of all, it never ends. And also it's like it's a constant evolution.
Yeah, and what would be one of your, your process that you use for yourself, like around the worthiness element? Because I know, like I've watched some coaches and they're just like, I just say I'm worthy, but for me that just
Yeah,
doesn't do it. Like just saying the
no.
affirmations, I can't get behind that. So I was wondering, like, what is some of the tools that you use for yourself?
Mm. It really depends on the moment. And this is also why I love working with people because everybody's different. So I use different tools depending on what they absorb best. So there's some people who like as I said, dig it back in the past. And so then we would go and see where did you feel worthy? When did you feel worthy? What triggered that sense of worthiness? And sort of like to go deep into that feeling and see where we can activate it now into their daily life. Personally, because I've always been somebody who sort of like I receive a lot of visions. Like as soon as I wake up in the morning and I go into meditation, I have these very strong visuals, and so for me, I know what in those visions makes me feel worthy, and I sort of I look at how I can implement that in my life, how I can sort of hold that frequency through the day. And so I write it down. I really focus on it and really sort of allow the that energy to flow. I also really love doing like some energy work, and this is also depending on people on how people receive that. If they're open to it, some people are more closed off. But for the people that are open to it, doing some energy work can be really powerful. Another way that I really like to activate worthiness is actually to look at what you really enjoy in general. Like, and then you can go into specifics. Because I find that a lot of women, because I work with women, they kind of like, they don't really know their preferences all that much because they have them, but they don't think so much about them because they're so caught up in what they need to do. And so they forget that they do really enjoy painting, or that I do really enjoy, like going for a walk often, or I do really enjoy, like I had a friend who was telling me the other day that how much she loves to swim. And so, and then you just make that connection that, okay, I'm worthy enough to make the time to do that. And sort of, and really, because that way you really tap into your desires, you tap into what you want, and you tap into who you really are and what you're all about. And it can be things like that get triggered, that, things that you might have enjoyed as a child, and then you kind of like never allowed yourself to desire again or to focus on again. And then it comes back up. It came for me, it was this year was big with dancing. Like I always been a dancer when I was a child. And then I kind of like got closed off because of all the training, and I stopped enjoying it. And then at the beginning of this year, I'm watching these dancers online, and it's like this big, like, heart opening experience. I'm like, wow, I really need to dance again. And right now it's such a big part of my life. And it's something that, for 15 years, I just told myself that I couldn't do. And suddenly I reconnected with that desire, and it feels so wholesome. It feels so just who I am. And so I love looking into people's what is it that they do really enjoy. And it can be like even particular kinds of food, or what experiences they do enjoy, and sort of and look to amplify them, activate them, and integrate them more into their lives. And I think that really amplifies your sense of worthiness, and also deep self-respect, because you're respecting what gives you pleasure, you're respecting what is promoting your well-being, you're respecting, it's a level of self-respect that goes deeper and deeper.
Yeah, it's so true because you are making the time for you. You're creating that
Yeah.
time for you to do what you love, what you're passionate about. And
Yeah.
by creating
Yeah.
that time frame for yourself, you're like, oh, like this is for me, and I'm worthy of it. And I love that you brought that up because when you are, if whoever's listening, like if you are single or in a relationship,
Mhm.
if you've noticed the theme of everything we were talking about, it all starts with you. It's like
Yeah.
obviously, like, I remember when I was single and I was going through that pattern that I was talking about earlier. In the beginning of that pattern, that which was actually back in my 20s before my long-term relationship, the 4-year one that I had,
Yeah.
that pattern at that time, it was like it will end. And then I noticed a pattern and I'm like, okay, so I didn't have any concept of healing at that time. So it was every time it was, what can I do differently? It was,
Mhm.
oh, well, maybe if I don't text them as much, maybe if I
Yeah.
play hard to
Right
get,
there. Yeah. Yeah.
maybe if okay, maybe the next one like I'll initiate more, or and I was
Mhm.
playing around with all these, but it was still that pattern.
Mhm.
And then I went in a relationship which taught me a lot, and then that ended and the pattern came back. And when the
Yes.
pattern came back, I was like, wait a second, this is the same pattern as my 20s. And
Hmm.
remembered thinking I did so many different things, like, like the do's and don'ts of dating. It didn't end the pattern. And so then being in the 30s, and it's like, wait a second, I think I need to look somewhere else. And that somewhere else is within. So we
Yes.
can't try to fix and change how we act towards something in terms of an action. But if we don't
Mhm.
look within ourselves to see what is really going on in there, in especially around that self-worth, then then it's the external circumstances are just like the patterns are just going to keep repeating themselves.
Exactly. It's just gonna be the same. There was something that I meant to say when you were saying, regarding the thinking of texting less, or like sort of trying to change the situation through like overthinking it, which is like we all have done, and it's so like ingrained in that. It's almost like for many people, like it's almost like it becomes like this game where you don't really show how you really feel. And my whole process of reconnecting to the heart is actually to be to the point where you always say how you feel, and you feel safe in saying that because it's your honest truth. And that's really what allows you to open your heart and really to have genuine relationships, is when you can say how you feel and not be afraid to offend, not be afraid to be offended, and just, being in that space of truth. And it's something, yeah, it's just such a strong conditioning, this game that we play. I used to do it as well, like with especially in my early 20s, like this thing that, oh, I should like sort of make myself more desired, and then I would like always attract these guys who were very, always playing it very cool, and kind of, I don't really care too much, but just enough to keep you around, like that kind of. And it's always like it comes from a closed, from a heart that is not open. Because when your heart is open, you say what you mean, you say what you feel, and that's when the true bonding can really happen. Because if you otherwise, it's a fake bond, it won't last.
Yeah. And when you are at that place of being able to speak your truth in terms of your emotions and really holding that space for yourself, what it's almost like this whole other superpower, because I know when I'm speaking my
Exactly.
truth, you don't know what's going to happen on the other side, but you're holding all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if the other side
Mm-hmm.
gets triggered, you're holding that. If the other side is loving and accepting and understanding, you're holding that. Whatever happens, you have this like almost superpower of like, well, if I can do this, if I can hold all of this, if I can hold myself in my truth, obviously, like if there is discomfort or my fears or whatever else brings up when you are speaking that truth, you can hold that, and then you can hold the other person on how they're going to react and what their response is. You're like, well, I'm just holding both, and it's like, if I can do this, what else can I do?
Yeah, correct. It is very empowering. And also, you give also your partner more freedom that way, because you're realizing that, oh, okay, he just said that because it's triggered, just triggered an emotion within him. Like it's not this end of the world thing that he got upset. It's just, something that triggers some whatever feeling of anger within him, some misalignment within him. And then we can talk about it. And it actually, I find that that's actually the process that makes the bond deeper, is when one of you, gets triggered, or, sort of gets caught up in an emotion, and the other one is capable of seeing that, and you find a solution together. You kind of soothing and each other, and you go to a deeper place, because you sort of like cleared out this negative emotion that had come up, and you go back to a place of love. So that's when the bond gets deeper and better over time.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it is interesting because I've been, yeah, in this relationship for 2 years, and it's been interesting in the dynamic of, like sometimes it's like when one side is going through something, like the other side is holding that space. But what I've
Mm-hmm.
come to realize of what the biggest challenge is that it's when both sides are going through something, both sides are navigating
Yes.
internal, and that's where there is like the growth. That is where it's, how do you handle that, right? Because it's like there's one thing when it's like you're doing good, they're not, so you're like, cool, I got you. But when you're both like not good, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, then now what?
Yeah.
How would you manage that?
So I find that in my experience, and also what I've observed with other people, it's like when you are in misalignment, you, because of what you're always gonna reach for harmony. So you might get caught up in that in that anger feeling and you, or whatever feeling it is, and you word it out, you let it out, you don't pretend that it's not there, you don't say, you don't tell yourself that you shouldn't be feeling it. You say it, but and after you express it fully, you naturally go to that state of like, okay, how can I solve this? How can we solve this together? And I find that another thing is to remind each other that you love each other. This is something that I found really powerful, even with other people, meaning that other people, what I suggested, that other people find it really powerful too. That, if let's say you're having a fight and it does not feel good, because it does not feel good when you have a fight. And so you feel it in your body. And when you are aware of your emotion, you're like, okay, this really feels terrible. So what can I do to improve this? And just to remind yourself to go back to the fact that, hey, like, it was never my intention to hurt you because I love you. No.
I do love the reminder, because you're right. In those moments of conflict, it is a sucky feeling. It's an uncomfortable feeling on both parties, no matter what's happening. It's almost like, kind of coming back to the basics. This was something my mom taught me for the longest time, and she's like, if you have a strong foundation, but the foundation
Mm-hmm.
needs to be strong. So
Beautiful.
it's when you said, like, kind of like, just say that you love each other and that your intention is not to hurt one another. That, to me, it's like, okay, you're going back to that foundation. You're going back to that.
Exactly.
What
Exactly.
is it that's there? What did you create this relationship based upon? And then from there, you can approach the situation differently. Sometimes it's, every relationship is different, and I'm sure you've seen it.
And that's what makes it just so interesting for me, because it's so deeply personal to the person, to the client. It's so tailor made around their world and their personality. And to be able to support that and hold the space in that is pure joy for me.
Yeah.
To find that, those unique ways that they can operate in by, promoting their own well-being and sort of living with healthy patterns and feel good in their own unique way. That's that's really exciting to me.
Yeah, exactly. Because there is no, like, I think sometimes we grew up with an idea of what things should look like, right? There's a sense
Mm-hmm.
of conditioning of what it should look like, how it should be. And but it's
Yeah.
sometimes it's not. It sometimes it doesn't make sense, and you're like, you don't understand what's going on.
Well, it's actually the story with my partner. So I have been with my partner for 11 years, and it's been a very intense journey with somebody who's in severe chronic pain. And so he would have this big mood swings. Our life as a result of that, because he needs to lie down a lot. He needs to, he gets very easily overwhelmed with sounds and noises and everything. So our life is kind of like slowed down. It's quite slow. And I have friends who are like, don't you desire to just like go out and do things? And I'm like, yes, I desire that, but I feel like on a soul level, I've chose this to really strengthen myself and to really be able to be independent. There's so many things that come up around that situation, that when I tell people, they immediately go into this deeply negative, because we've got a young child as well. And so they go into like this deep negative state, and I'm like, no, I feel that there is that I have made this choice, and it is bringing me so many things on a soul level that is actually very important to me. And so it's something that if you look at it from the outside, most people go into a negative state around it, but I don't, because I know that and this is another thing, what is supposed to look like rather than what is actually soulful to you and what is actually really serving you with your deepest intentions and deepest desires. And I know that for me, I remember when I was, 20, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine who had like her whole career planned out. Like she knew exactly what she wanted to do since she was little. And I've always been like, wow, that's so incredible. And she said, well, what do you want to do? And I remember saying, like, I don't really know what I want to do. I just know that I want to be wise. Like, I want to be somebody who can find happiness under all conditions. And that's quite a tall order. Now, like looking back, I'm like, what have I unleashed with that statement? But ultimately, it's true. Like that's exactly what I wanted. Like I can pretend that I wanted something different, but it wasn't. Like at my core, I wanted that challenge. I wanted to be able to hold that space, and so that I could also become a coach as well, and do other things, and sort of also, yeah, understanding that there's cycles and patterns, and just because life is like this right now, it doesn't mean that it's going to be like this forever, which is something that I find like really a big stumbling point for many people, that sort of if life is like this and they sort of project it to be forever like this, and it's never the case.
Yeah, that is a really good one. And I love that you brought that up because it always it like what I like to do is I like to zoom out and I'm like, there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger picture I'm not seeing. There's something more to this. Like there's like, like from moments of like discomfort and healing and doing all this stuff. And it's like sometimes, yeah, you get stuck and you're like, wait, is this forever? Like, am I gonna be
Yes. Yeah.
doing this forever? And you're like, wait, no, because like there's no way, it physically wouldn't make sense with the amount of like deep dive and inner healing and soul work and all that. It just wouldn't make
Yeah.
sense for it to stay the same stagnant. But even if you're listening and you don't kind of do super deep dive inner healing, it still doesn't mean it's going to be forever either.
Mm-hmm.
Life has its ways of twists and turns. And I think that was like one thing that the pandemic taught us was that control is an illusion and things are unpredictable. And sometimes something can just change literally overnight.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like whether you're actively healing or not actively healing, it doesn't matter. At the end, we don't actually have control of our circumstances, like, or we have as much control in some areas, but it's like it's life is
Mm-hmm.
just gonna happen. It's gonna happen for you for your greatest good. And so in those moments
Exactly.
where it feels challenging in whether you are in the single life or in a relationship. Like if you're in the single life and you're feeling like, am I ever gonna actually find someone? I've been in that space
Mm-hmm.
too
Yeah,
of
that was
like
a big one for me.
wondering,
I used to feel like that.
yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
is that a possibility? I've been single for so long, used to being on my own, and then, but it's not forever. It's not. There's a
No,
bigger picture.
no. Mm-hmm. And especially I find it's ultimately like going back to that trust that everything is unfolding. And I know that it can be very frustrating, but at the same time, it's like I always like remind people when they tell me, oh, but those are just words. I'm like, yeah, but feel how they feel into your body. What is your body telling you? When you tell yourself to trust and there's a reason that everything is unfolding the way it's doing, how do you feel in your body? And they're like, oh, I feel like relaxed, I feel good. And it's like, yeah, that is it's telling you something. That thought is promoting your well-being. If you
Yes.
keep on saying the opposite of it, you feel a crunch, you feel a contraction, that you're releasing chemicals that are not supporting to your well-being. And it's like, just even going back to the wisdom of the body and seeing that guidance is always there, and that you don't have to be like, we all have got patterns, so we all get caught up, but then we can snap ourselves out of that, and we can see the bigger picture, and we can hold that perspective. And the more we do it, the more it will come natural, and the more life will become beautiful, and you're going to start seeing like the deeper meaning behind of all the little things that happen, and then you can see how everything makes sense.
Always in hindsight, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And yeah, tapping into the body, that one has been a huge, huge point for me, especially this year. Just there has been a lot of challenges that I've gone through and just tapping in and checking in because sometimes like even with my business, I've had it like, oh, should I just like throw the towel and
Oh yeah.
get
Oh
get
yeah.
that job, get that 9 to 5, get that stable income. And it's always, and I know that's like a little off topic from what we're talking about, but it's like those examples of like when you feel like giving up or you feel like, oh, maybe it's not working, and then it's tapping into the body and it's okay, do I just keep going? Like, do I hang on? Is there something here? And it's like usually the body, if it's calm, I feel like as you explained it, when it's calm, it's serene. It's like, why is your mind freaking out? What are you freaking out about? Because we
Yeah.
have these fears, and sometimes these fears can kind of take over a little bit because of the past that we've gone through, right? And that's
Exactly.
only normal that it's gonna pop up, and it's gonna be whether it's from a situation of a loving relationship you had, or whether it was a co-working situation where you had another employer that, or a fellow employee that didn't treat you with respect, or whatever it was. Like we all have these like
Yeah.
moments in life, and then sometimes what happens is that the minute our brain will look at that one thing and it's like, oh, that
Yeah.
one thing that it's so tiny, and it's like, oh, that one thing that is wrong, and then we make that one thing this big in the
Yes.
mind.
Yes. We're kind of like, I think like we're kind of trained like that from when we are little to kind of like fixate more on the negative than on the positive, to make the negative more important than the positive. And that's when we start taking things for granted. And it's like, oh wait, what? We actually got so much going on that is positive, but we just take it for granted because we're
Exactly.
fixated on the negative. Yeah.
Yeah, I worked with a coach, and I remember saying to her, I'm like, I feel like I have low energy these days. I'm always on low energy. And she's like, okay,
Mm.
put on your calendar if you're low energy, neutral, or high energy. Just write it down. And you know what? The days that were low energy wasn't that many.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
Right? So we do focus a
Mm.
lot on the negative, and I think that comes with, I mean, that could be a whole other podcast episode on its own about
Exactly. Yes.
the conditioning of
Yes.
society with the negativity, but we do. And so this is where tapping into a practice, one I just shared, or a gratitude practice, or looking at life and being like, wait, what is working? What is working
Mm-hmm.
right now? I like doing that. I like saying like, okay, what is working in my business? What is working in my healing? What is working in my relationship? What is all the things that are working? And you tune in and you're like, oh, wait a second. There's a lot of things that are working.
Yes. Yes.
Bring it back. Bring it back. I've loved this conversation a lot because there's so much relationships in any element is the biggest growth, self-growth, healing, learning of ourselves. And the minute you kind of turn it into really like diving into what am I here to learn about me? I do believe that when we start looking from the lens when it comes to relationships, that there's something for us to learn and grow about ourselves and get curious about that element. I feel like
Mm.
that is just something that just unopens a whole other layer to life, and
Yes.
like how to live life. And so what I would love to know is if you can share some things that I would say, like, guidance that you can give the audience who want to like learn a little bit more about themselves, in whether they are single or in a relationship. What are some of the things that they can like kind of get started?
Well, I always see, look at your desires, look
Yeah.
at what you really want, look at what is really like soulfully, because that is going to be your roadmap. That is showing you the direction you're going, that is showing you the direction you're meant to go. And from there, then the next is to look at your emotions, because your emotions are literally running your life. Like our emotions, we live our life in response or reaction to our emotions. And it's always astonishing to me how little we talk about emotions when they literally run our life. It is
Yeah.
really depending on how you respond or react to them. That's going to be your action. That's going to be your speech. That's going to be the way you create your reality. And so to look at your emotions and see what So kind of what I was saying before a little bit, like whatever statements you make, see how it feels into the body. And with that, you tap into the wisdom of the body too. And see that what kind of mental thought, what kind of thoughts that you have are promoting your well-being and which ones are blocking it. And understand that, we are trained to be more negative than positive. So don't be judgmental. Don't be upset at yourself that you're not this perfect being. We're not meant to be this perfect being in that sense. I mean, I feel that we are perfect the way we are. It's just a constant refining. But as you start looking at your emotions, you're really tapping into your wisdom. You can really, truly start looking after yourself, because literally the moment you can turn around negative emotions into positive, that's what healing is. Healing is going from a state of chronic negative emotion about something to a state of chronic positive emotion about that subject. That's what healing is. And so once you can look at, feel your emotions and find ways to turn them around whenever they don't feel good, that's the key to your empowerment. That's the key to your own joy. That's the key to your own self-respect. That's the key to your own self-love. That's what actually self-love is. And so to be able to nurture yourself just like you would nurture somebody that you love, that would be the key. For somebody who wants to attract a relationship, I would say, and also for somebody who wants to upgrade their relationship that they're in, for me, it's always make your life as beautiful as you can by doing the things that you enjoy doing. And I can't stress enough that tapping into your own desires and what you actually enjoy, because that is the language of your soul. If you want to reconnect to living a more meaningful life, a more full life, a life that is much more flavorful by reconnecting to what you actually uniquely enjoy, is going to make your life more enjoyable. It's going to make your relationships more enjoyable. It's going to give you more creativity. Like it's such an enormous effect. And there are more specific work that I do when you want to attract that relationship. And so we would go into the feelings of really feeling what that relationship feels like. And which is always really exciting, because you're going to see uniquely what kind of the emotions you choose to experience in that relationship. It's very personal work, and it always makes you reconnect with that heart space, that soul space. It's extremely empowering as a result.
I love all of that. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And thank you for being on this podcast. I love the conversations we had around relationships and the relationship with the self. I think that we just talked on so many good little nuggets in this episode. Now, where can people find you? How can people connect with you? And yeah, can we just share? I will put it in the show notes for those who are listening. If you're driving and, doing things, you can just go back to show notes. But yeah, please share away.
Yeah. So I am pretty much on all platforms. I do have an Instagram and a Facebook that I haven't been using anymore, but you can still reach me there. And also I'm on TikTok.
Perfect. And what is the name that is it all the same name that?
So it's Claudia Cantori.
Great. Amazing. It will all be in the show notes for those who are listening. And this is how you can connect with Claudia. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. I love your energy. I love your vibe. I love everything you've said. It's absolutely beautiful. And
Like, it was a pleasure.
yay. And
Thank you for the opportunity.
oh, you're welcome. And thank you for all those who are listening. And I will catch you next time.